Getting to Kaden. Okay, we're live now.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mentor Monday. I hope your week is getting off to a fabulous start. I hope you had a great weekend and you are ready to take in some serious knowledge. Today, we have two very special guests with us. We have Toni Forge, Esquire, and Monique Jackson-Fitzgerald, Esquire, of 4LeafConsulting in Los Angeles, California. And they are going to share with us today some really important things we need to know about compliance, locally and statewide, 280E concerns, and we're going to get into some talk around setting up your business structure, some of the challenges that they have in LA. We're going to look at some differences between local laws and state laws. It's going to be a really awesome conversation today. I'm very looking forward to talking with these beautiful women. My co-host today, Jamie Cooper, is out, so we have Sarah watching for comments and questions. So we will be taking questions later on in our conversation. So please, if you have any questions at all about compliance or 280E or how you find out about what your local and state laws are, please leave questions in the comments and we will be getting to them in this broadcast. So ladies, thank you so much for joining me and welcome to Mentor Mondays.
Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to be here with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love your page, first and foremost. I love all you ladies out there doing your damn thing. It is really exciting. And so I am more than over the moon or over the eclipse to be here today.
Nice one.
Exactly.
So why don't we just get right into it? I want to hear about your history. I know you have been in the traditional business world as attorneys for 20 plus years, and you recently made the jump into cannabis. So tell me a little bit about what inspired you. Toni, you were telling me before we came on air that it was Monique that got you into it. How did that happen?
Absolutely. So I have been a defense lawyer and a business litigator in LA for around 27 years. It's good, ladies, the cream. It's really good. And so I was so done with corporate life. I mean, my soul, it sucked the human life out of me. And I was at lunch with Monique opining about how I can't do this anymore. And Monique said, why don't you do cannabis law with me? And I thought, okay, well, that sounds interesting. But when I got into it, I was just amazed, number one. Amazed that it was such a new emerging market. We're setting legal precedents on a lot of things. It was a lot of people weren't in the space. For me, there was not a lot of female attorneys and women of color. I want to be represented. I want to have a seat at that table. For me now, like we were saying at the beginning of this, it's an obligation. I want to fight for women of color and women in general to make sure they are a part of this emerging industry. And I was so shocked when I attended a lot of conferences and I saw all of these, I'm going to just be 100% honest, white men out there. And I thought this was the free to be you and me type of industry. Why are I seeing, it looks like an attorney convention out here? And so that really made me want to push forward and say, you know what, I'm doing this. And now, ladies, I'm all in.
Woo! We are so happy to have you, Toni. I love your energy. Monique, how did you get involved in cannabis?
So a little bit like Toni, I was becoming dissatisfied in my work. I focus most of my practice on litigation and then on estate planning. So I was looking for something just maybe a little more stimulating mentally and just a little more interesting. And we discovered, by hearing about cannabis here in California, discovering that it is really an industry and a market that was something that I wasn't familiar with. So I started, learning a little bit about it, going to meetings, going to conferences and whatnot, and finding out that there weren't enough women there and there weren't enough compliance professionals there. Everyone was in the business, but nobody knew what the business was or what the laws were around it. So I felt like it was really important to cover that and to really give people an opportunity to start in this industry on the right foot, so that they are on the path to compliance, so that they are complying with their state laws, their local laws, and then hopefully eventually with federal laws as they get on board with this.
And that will come.
Yes.
All right, so let's dig into compliance. You had last week, or a couple weeks ago, we had on Shabnam and Amanda. Actually, that was last week. And we learned that you need many, many attorneys on your side. It isn't just one attorney that's going to take care of everything. So
Right.
tell us a little bit about what your specialty is in this arena. And then let's use that to kind of talk then about compliance and the need for compliance and how we go about becoming compliant.
Well, I think besides needing several attorneys, you need several subject matter experts. So I want to say subject matter experts instead of attorneys.
Okay.
What we do is we help people and guide them through the process. So there's a licensing and complying process. So let's take California, for example. In order to get a state license, you need a local license. So we're going to help you go through the steps of obtaining that local license in hopes of getting your state license. So we help people with business plans, with all of the licensing, with the application itself, with other vendors that they will need. For example, you need insurance here in California. You're going to need a detailed security plan. So that means you need a security expert. We help. So think of us as the middle of a spoke in a wheel, and we're going to help you move that wheel, and we're going to provide for you all the different little spokes that go out. And so we're going to help you turn that wheel and be a compliant, long-lasting business. That is our goal. We're going to help you be in this field 5 years from now, just not 2 years. We want you really to think about this as a long-term business, and therefore compliance is extremely important to help you get that goal.
Okay, so you said something interesting, and this is not necessarily across the board, but in California, you have to get a local license before you can get a state license.
Yes.
So with all of these different licenses that we need to be aware of, all the compliance issues we need to be aware of, where does someone start? So I'm interested in starting a cannabis business. I know there are rules and regulations, but how do I begin to figure this out?
Well, I think the first thing that everyone needs to know, not just in California, but in all states, is that marijuana and cannabis are still a Schedule I drug. They are federally illegal. So there is no way to get a federal license for marijuana, for cannabis cultivation, consumption, dispensing, none of that. It's federally illegal. What we do have at the state level and what we're working with are federal memos that were issued under various administrations, some of which address what the DEA's enforcement priorities are going to be. And then the most common one that most people hear about is the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment, soon to be the Rohrabacher-Blumenauer Amendment. And that is the one that basically says that if a business or person is complying with all of their state laws about the regulation of cannabis, and they are not doing any certain things that are, for instance, diverting it to children, diverting it out of state, those types of things, then it says that we're not going to use our enforcement dollars to go after these people within these states. So
Toni,
that's
what is the difference between the Cole memo, which I was reading about this morning, and the Rohrabacher-Farr memo?
Toni, you're up on the Cole.
Right. The Cole memo just gives prioritization of enforcement. Okay. And so it basically tells you that prosecutors should follow a certain order. And if you think I've memorized that order, Kara, that's a no-go. So let me tell you what that goes into. So the first thing is enforcement priorities should be A, preventing distribution of marijuana to minors, preventing revenue from sale of marijuana from going to criminal enterprises, gang, and cartel. It's just enforcement priorities. That's what the Cole memo does.
And Rohrabacher, on the other hand, is the one that deals with giving the monies to these agencies for the enforcement within the states and working in conjunction with the states for enforcement. So what California has done is, since we've had medical marijuana here for quite some time, they started to come up with a scheme of regulation for the medical market. And then at the same time, we went ahead and we passed our Adult Use Act last year that was going to regulate the adult use or recreational market, if you will. In the meantime, the governor decided, well, we really shouldn't have two different systems with all these regulations. Why not? Let's bring them all together under the same umbrella and regulate this industry. So now we are using what's known as the trailer bill, or SB 94, which will be the overarching regulatory scheme for both medical and adult use in California. So what does that mean for everybody? They issued regulations for medical. I think if you've been following California, they issued the regulations. We had a public comment period, and then the trailer bill passed. So they pulled back all those regulations. They're holding them close to the chest now. They're looking at things. They're probably going to reissue them, I think, in September. And then those will be the regulations that the state will use now for the both the medical and the adult use licensing.
And Kara, let me just clarify, when I talked about the coal, those are the priorities to avoid federal prosecution. It goes through all of that. I just want to be clear and not confuse your listeners.
Thank you for that, Toni.
So
go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is that with the trailer bill, as I said, they pulled back the medical regulations, but one thing it did do is it changed a couple of the proposed regulations. It changed a couple of our licensing categories that we're going to have here in California. Right now, as it stands, they're going to be issuing licenses for cultivators, for distributors, for manufacturers at 2 different types, and then for testing labs, and then for dispensaries or non-storefront retail delivery dispensaries. That's a new one that just got added back in. And then the micro business is a new one. So there's been a couple of things that are, things are in limbo and have gone up and down over the last few months here. But they are going to issue medical licenses and adult use under that trailer bill.
There is so much to keep straight here.
I know, right?
Okay, so Kara, this is why I wanted to go in this business, because we work our business like you asked the question. How does one get started? How you're going to get started is you're going to say, I want to be in the city of LA. Let's see what type of regulations the city of LA has. The city council is in charge of those regulations, okay? And so usually they have in their minutes what those proposed regulations look like. So I suggest to your viewers that they look at the proposed regulations and say, do I have a business plan? They're going to want a business plan. They're going to want an application. They're going to want an application fee. They're going to want all these things. Can I do all these things? Do I need help doing all these things? Do I need to call a lawyer? I don't know how to do a business plan. Do I need to call a business person? I don't know about marketing. Can I call Kira? She can tell me about marketing. So that's what you're going to do on a local level. And then you're going to do the same thing for the state. In California, there is a Bureau of, is it Cannabis Control this week?
This week the name is the Bureau of Cannabis Control.
It's changed names. It used to be marijuana regulation. But you're going to call and you're going to go on their website. They have a very robust website, and you're going to see all of the requirements for having a license in California. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to make sure you fulfill the requirements on the local level, which includes issues of real estate, like I said, business plan, security, insurance, all of these things. And you're going to look at the state requirements. Luckily, a lot of them overlap. So you're not reinventing the wheel with the state requirements. A lot of some of the local requirements merge with the state. Now, keep in mind, for example, in LA County, there is still a ban on marijuana. So you want to make sure the local jurisdiction does not have a ban. And you want to make sure that that city you choose is doing what you want to do. For example, there's cities that just have dispensaries only. There's cities that have cultivation only. So you have to make sure that the particular city you're looking in is mirroring the particular part of the business you would like to get in. So that's how you start at first. And then we offer, I think you can go on our website. We have a great checklist for people to get into the business. This is what you need. Yeah, well, that's Monique's idea. Really cool. I love it.
Would you ladies be okay if we posted that in the group?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
actually, and I'll send it to you because it's recently been updated. Again, the law is in such limbo and it goes back and forth that we recently rewrote the entire thing to account for the changes under the trailer bill and the differences in the regulations that have just come up.
So on our checklist, we have business formation, all those things that we've been talking about previously, but it is literally reading a rule book and checking everything off. For you listeners, you need to go on the local level. You need to go to the state. I don't know if you're in a state that doesn't have any local requirement, but it's going to be incumbent on you to look to make sure that if they do have a local requirement, you're fulfilling those local requirements as well.
And so I would say that in California, we can count on a couple of things. And this is probably going to be true for most states where you want to start a highly regulated business like this cannabis business, is that you know, at minimum for the state level, you're going to need to have an entity formation, meaning you're going to have to start a company of some sort, whether it's going to be an LLC, a corporation. It's going to depend on the requirements of your location. The other thing that you know you're going to have is you're going to have to do a live scan background check. What does that mean for everybody who's never
I
done?
heard someone mention that, and I didn't know what that was. So yes, please tell us what that is.
What here in California, anyway, you have to disclose all of the owners of your business and all of the investments in your business. So an owner, for purposes of California law, is anyone with a 20% or more interest in the business, or it's someone who is on the board of directors of a not-for-profit, or it's the CEO, or it's the person who has management and control of your business. All of those people have to do the live scan background check.
So can I ask you a quick question about that? So what qualifies as a business that has to do that? So my business, Caden Academy, we don't touch the plant. We don't at all, right? We're an ancillary business. So we don't need to worry about that. Where does it cross the line that then it now moves into someone that has to follow these rules in Canada?
That's an excellent point. It moves into that point when you touch the flower.
So whether I'm making edibles, tinctures, cultivating.
Absolutely. If you are looking for licenses as a cultivator, if you are an edible manufacturer, if you're an extractor, somebody who makes tinctures and topicals, if you are a testing lab that tests cannabis, it's just solely cannabis. If you are going to be a distributor for cannabis, or if you're going to be a retail location for cannabis, those people are all the people that are going to be subject to licensing under the scheme. So
what if I wanted to open a bed and breakfast or a tour?
So cannabis tourism right now is not being addressed under the current regulations. That is forthcoming, I'm sure, once the industry gets established. So I would say for someone like that, you need to look to the laws for personal use and find out what those are and what the requirements are, what the laws are on gifting cannabis, on sharing cannabis, that sort of thing. Again, you're dealing with something that's federally illegal, and so you have to be cautious that you're not helping someone to break the law.
One thing I just want to add, this has been here are my biggest pet peeve. With the passage of Prop 64, everybody thinks it's a smoke free for all.
Yes.
And that's not the case. There's rules and regulations. So when I have clients that say, I'm going to start a smokehouse and publicly have people come in and smoke, that don't exist, people. Okay. So you have to keep this in mind. There's still rules and regulations surrounding cannabis, even though we voted it in as adult use being legal, there's still the rules and regulations. So be mindful of that. And if you're across the country, be mindful of what the rules are in your state. Having it legal does not mean it's a free for all. I get that from family members all the time. It doesn't. It doesn't.
So where do I go physically, regardless of where I am? Where do you tell women in Michigan and Arizona and Texas, where do you go to find out what those rules and regulations are? Is there, someone, when I was in Salinas, someone said, contact the city attorney and they'll be able to tell you. So where does that person who's like, I don't know where to begin, where do they physically go?
Well, it really depends, because a lot of the cities that I've contacted, it really is the planning commission. So if I were you, I'm going to tell you what I do for clients. I get on the computer and I go to a particular city's website and I look to see and search marijuana. A lot of times they have information that comes down that talks about what the city council or the planning commission or the city attorney has decided. So there you're going to find out if it's banned. If it's banned, it's usually connected to a city ordinance banning it, or if it's open. One thing, people, the cities are so forthcoming. So if you don't see it on their website, pick up the phone and call them and say, you know, I'm interested to see if I can have a commercial cannabis business in your city. Is that possible? I can guarantee you they're going to get you to the right person. And I've had it that people have called me back and have shown me where I couldn't find it in a particular ordinance. Under this ordinance, this is what makes it legal or illegal. So start on your computer and get on the website. And if you're for a particular state, the state is going to have a website. So like we said in California, it's the Bureau of Cannabis Control. See if there's something similar to that in the state of Texas or wherever you are, but go on the appropriate website to see where you can get the information. The information is there. It really is. But I found when I first entered this space, it was like, where's Waldo? It was just really, it was unbelievable. But when I just took a step back and start going to the city websites and the state websites and going to those state and city meetings, you have got to be a participant, people, and get that information. It really is there. It really is.
That is why at Caden, we focus, our last module is all about how to become an activist.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Cannot be an entrepreneur in this space without also being an activist.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We were at City Hall last Tuesday.
We were at a rally
in Los Angeles, trying to fight for some good regulations, for some social equity. We're all about that. So yeah, you have got to be involved. Because, Kara, I really believe we have to change the face of cannabis. Everybody has this big preconceived notion of what people look like in this space. Who would think two people who are advocates in this space would look like us, okay? And so we have to change the perception of those city council people, like, we are active, good members of our community. And even when we open our canna businesses, we are still going to continue to be good members of the community. We're going to sponsor your little league. We're going to help do bake sales. Not medicated, but that we are a part of the beautification of the community. So you have got to get involved.
You know, we had a really great first Founder Friday last week with a woman named Cynthia Gonzalez, who was actually able to obtain the first permit in Arroyo Grande, San Luis Obispo.
Oh, great.
And she was talking about the same thing, and we hear this over and over again. And did you attend the Women's Empowerment Summit that Simone and Calogia threw?
Yeah, we sponsored that.
Yeah, we were one of the co-sponsors.
What an incredible event.
It was amazing.
I was so struck by the fact that all of these women showed up on a Saturday dressed professionally, behaving professionally. And that's what we need to do. We need more and more of that, because we need to normalize this industry, because the reality is cannabis has the ability to bring more jobs to the US than anything we have right now across the board that are not going to be outsourced to robots.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's important, you know, in marketing and branding, we know that women make the majority of the purchasing decisions in the home. And so we also need to be the majority of the business owners in this industry. We need to be cannabis by and for, you know, women and for diversity, so that this isn't just an industry, again, of, I don't want to call it
politically correct. Monique's too politically correct.
But also, you know, you have to break the stigma that this isn't a 20-year-old, you know, college kid with the munchies and wearing tie-dye. This is a business. This is an industry. We're all professionals here, and we all have a voice that needs to be heard.
Yes, I completely agree. It was a little disappointing today to read the MJ Biz article about the fact that the number of women executives in cannabis has actually dropped.
Oh, no.
It's still higher than most industries, but we've gone from, I think it was 36% to about 28%. And this was a little disheartening for me because we've made our entire mission at Caden Academy to actually move that percentage up to 50%.
Absolutely.
And I'm surrounded by women who do this all day. I'm deeply embedded in this world now, so it's all I can see. So I was shocked to realize that. So we've got our work cut out for us, ladies. We really do.
We really do. And it's time to move some of the barriers to entry that people are encountering, which are primarily economic at this point for certain people. And it's because other people have the ability to merge their businesses together, bring in investors and whatnot, and they have the voice, they have the audience for it. And women and people of color and whatnot are not necessarily getting that same audience and getting heard in that same manner. So I think it's time for us all to kind of join forces and bring it together. And also, share our knowledge, share what we know about it so that we can help increase that number.
Yeah. One thing I loved about Simone's event was the sense of mentorship. Remember, we went in those small groups and it was really tell your story. How can we help you? And in fact, I met a woman that I've been trying to meet for years, and she just happened to spearhead my group. And as a result of that, Monique and I really got involved in the social equity piece and really trying to help draft some legislation and some language around what social equity looks like. But I believe in mentorship. It has helped me my entire life, both professionally and personally. So I would encourage everyone out there to really help somebody. Knowledge is so much power. And, my grandmother used to say, a closed fist doesn't do anything because nothing can come in or out. So you got to open up your hand. And I would encourage everybody out there to really open your hand and help another female really get it together and get out there.
So isn't that, we have so much more to talk about on the legal side, but we could talk about this stuff all day, but I just want to say and acknowledge the fact that it's women like you who have having this group, Women Entrepreneurs in Cannabis, one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had as a marketer.
Oh,
because
thank you.
I started this group, and that idea right there is something that is actually very pervasive within this community. Open hand, share your knowledge, share your information. And it has almost brought me to tears a few times seeing the number of women who are going into business together, who've met each other there, who are helping each other, woman to woman, whether they're professionals in the field or they've just had some experience with their own business and have something to share. There's just this incredible spirit of generosity that whether I'm in LA or I'm in San Francisco or Michigan or Washington, D.C., I find it everywhere with the women in this industry.
Right.
And I love so much being a part of it.
Likewise.
I don't have the attorney information. And so having brilliant, highly educated and very experienced women like yourselves coming in and saying, hey, I'm going to give you my checklist. I'm going to help you in any way that I can to make sure you are successful in your business. I'm going to give you as much free as I can. I love that. And I appreciate that so much about both of you. Everything I do is so worth it because, it's going to be a fight for us to get where we want to go, but we get better together.
Absolutely. And, and seeing that need is what really caused Toni and I to lift this banner of inclusiveness for this industry, because we don't want anyone to be left out. There's enough of this pie for all of us at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. And it's time to take some money back from the corporations.
Absolutely.
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 So let's talk about the need for compliance. So we've talked about how you find out how to be compliant, but what is the risk here? Tell me, is there an example that you have of someone who thought that they could skirt the rules a little bit or that they didn't apply to them, and what happened?
So, this isn't, and Toni has another example, I'm sure, because I know exactly why she's laughing, but it's not a client of ours, but someone that we heard about, that we know about, that, he was enticed into purchasing what he thought was a fully compliant, licensed Los Angeles pre-ICO Prop D dispensary, and he spent approximately $2.5 million on purchasing this entity. But he didn't do his own due diligence, so he didn't realize that by purchasing it, he's destroying the continuity of ownership that was one of the requirements for the Prop D compliant shops. So it's things like that that I think highlight why you have to do your own due diligence, and you also have to assemble a team that will help you so you don't make those kind of missteps. That's a super expensive mistake to make. You know, I don't know a lot of people that can afford to just give up $2 million.
I just want $2 million.
Yeah,
really?
I mean, like, that's it. Yeah, the thing that I see, oh my God, the Craigslist ads just make me puke, because you can buy a license in LA on Craigslist for $1 million for 98. And unfortunately, I had a friend who was arguing me down and saying, there are licenses in LA right now. What are you talking about? I'm going to purchase one for $96,000. Well, you're going to be $96,000 poor. So my warning is, if it's too good to be true, probably is. You know, you have to look at that Craigslist stuff with a grain of salt. You have to do your due diligence. I'm not trying to say everybody on Craigslist is horrible. I'm saying, if you see that you're interested, do your due diligence. Because if that person would have gone on to the LA City website, they would have known there are currently no licenses available in LA City, because we are doing the proposed licenses in LA City. So how is somebody going to sell you something that doesn't exist? So that's the thing. The other thing that's really kind of shocking is, unfortunately, we do have clients that are being raided. Enforcement is real. We've seen that happen in LA. And so you may have to make sure that, and now, you know, it's Prop D, pre-ICO compliant dispensaries, for example. So imagine if those people did not have even that, what they'd be looking at. There's people taking your product, taking your money, and that's something you really need to think about. Compliance is important for a lot of reasons. Number one, you want to make sure you have a business. And we live now in a state that is a regulated business, is going to be regulated as of January 1st. So you want to be compliant because you want to be in business. You don't want to wear the yellow jumpsuit or the orange jumpsuit. So those are two good reasons right there. You know, you want to make sure that you've done everything possible. And I know people who are listening, I hear all the time, people are making money, people are selling edibles, making edibles out of their house and selling them on the internet. People are transporting across state lines. I know that, but that is a risk they are taking. And now, you know, there still is a huge risk, but can you imagine, Kira, when enforcement starts and regulation starts, that risk is going to be really high. Why are you taking the risk? Get in compliance now. Start working on your business plan. Start working on the licensing requirements. That's not going to take 2 weeks, people. That's going to take a while. So you need to start now. So when the applications go through starting January 1st, you're in there.
Very, very good advice. I'm going to take a quick moment. Sarah, does anyone have any questions for us so far about compliance or anything we've been talking about before we dive into the next segment of our conversation?
We don't have any questions yet. Not yet.
Okay. All right, good. So let's keep going. All right, so we must learn about our local and state laws because it is going to be up to each municipality. And it's really interesting too, because there's a difference between city and county. And so I know in LA, for instance, it may not be acceptable in LA County, but the city of West Hollywood, which is kind of right in the middle, has its own ability to run its own program, even though it's right in the middle of LA County. So it can vary from your city to your county to your municipality, depending on where you are. So you need to understand that and start on your city's website.
Yes.
And you need to understand what's going on locally and how those two are connected. They may not always be connected the way they are in California, but you need to know them both. And then before you do anything, do tons of due diligence, do your research, and hire an attorney to help you who specializes in this.
And I'm going to stop you. Really do due diligence on your attorney, because
good one.
You know, we have people that come to us and say, my attorney told me to do X, Y, and Z, which I know for a fact is illegal. And so if I were you, even though I hired somebody, and yes, you're hiring a certain level of expertise, I still will do my due diligence. I still would say, let me just look on the federal regulations, let me just look on the state regulations and see what they say about that. Because unfortunately, people are getting wrong information out there. And that's what made us kind of want to get into it, because we would go to these conferences and we hear the urban legends going around, and the urban, you can do this, you can have tours now in California for cannabis, all of these things. And it was just not correct. And we had some people approach us and say, well, attorney told me to do X, Y, and Z. Just because they're an attorney doesn't mean they know anything about cannabis. And that's what you need to figure out. And that's in all areas of the law. I know absolutely nothing except succession, intestate succession, when we're talking about what Monique does. I know nothing else. I don't remember it from law school. So you need to make sure, even though I've hired a lawyer, do they know what the cannabis laws are?
Last week, Amanda and Shabnam made it very clear that we need to make sure that our attorneys are a good fit with us.
Yes.
That we ask them the right questions, that we like the way they speak to us, they get back to us on time, that they're a good fit. So you're taking that one step further and saying, okay, make sure they're a good fit, and also make sure that they're following the law, that they're giving you the right advice.
Yeah, if we can't preach about compliance if we ourselves are not adhering to that. So compliance, 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 3 times. I hope everybody heard it. Everybody remembers it now. Say it 3 times, compliance, compliance, compliance.
And in anything, especially when you're in this relationship, it is a relationship. I have to get a vibe from you. You have to be relatable to me. We've got to connect, because if we're doing a business, especially a canna business, this is going to be a long-term relationship. So I have to feel comfortable. I have to feel like you're not speaking down to me, because you know how those damn attorneys can be. They can talk that little legalese language, and I've been a litigator, so you have to be able to break it down, because people on the jury are just average individuals, And so you have to feel comfortable with the people that you're talking with, your experts. There's no stupid question. You don't know. So if you feel that you cannot ask what you perceive to be as the most lame, stupid question, that's not the person you should be with. So I agree with the attorneys from your show that you absolutely have to vet them out to see if it's a good fit. It's like a hairdresser and my brow person. My brow person better, we've got to connect el simpatico, because the brows are important. And that should be the same way with your legal team or any of your ancillary experts for your business.
And this is really good advice for women, because we tend to not want to push, not want to confront. I hate confrontation. So if somebody tells me something, okay, fine. And it's easy to not want to be your own best advocate, but you absolutely have to put on that hat as a business owner in this industry. And if you are vendors, if you are attorney, if you're consultant who you've hired to help you through the process is not working for you, you've got to stand up for yourself. It's not worth it.
Right.
No, and especially since the risk here isn't just that you lose your investment. The risk here is that you could also go to jail. So you want to make sure that the person that you use is somebody that has your best interest in mind.
And ladies, we manage a household, and that's the hardest thing ever. So the same kind of skills that you would in managing a household, and I don't care if you're single or have children or whatever, that kind of tenacity to make sure the whole place doesn't go to hell in a handbasket, you need to put that same tenacity into your business and making sure I'm asking the right questions. I don't care if they're pissed off. I don't care if they think I'm bitchy. I don't care whatever they may think. This is my livelihood. This is my business. And yeah, I'm going to be a bitch if it entails me being a bitch.
And keeps me out of jail.
Yeah. Right? But Toni leads us to a good point. The next thing that's absolutely required in this business is that you have a business plan. And part of your business plan is understanding what your vision and your mission is. And the reason you want to put that down on paper is so that later on, as you get through this process, when the dollar signs are in your eyes and people are offering you X for this and Y for that. You don't get swayed from your mission, from what you started at. Make sure that whatever's offered to you fits your plan for your business, fits your ideal of what you want it to be 5 years, 10 years down the road. It's your roadmap. Use it.
Yes.
The other thing, Kara, I would like to warn women is vet your investors.
Oh.
Vetting your investors is very, very important. You've got to make sure you're on the same plane with them. We're seeing a lot of people, especially in Oakland, with the social equity program, that investors are saying, okay, I'm going to give you $30,000 for 70% of your business. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So you know the worth of your company. You know the worth of your own sweat equity that goes in that company.
And if you don't know, you need to research it and find out.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so we all know it's so hard to get investors. Everybody's gung-ho, but you really got to make sure you vet them to see if they have the same vision for your company, and if you're giving away a logical percentage of what you're getting compensation for.
And we're going to actually have a couple of investors on in the coming weeks who are going to really break it down for us, is how you create a valuation. How do you, I saw someone speak at MJ Biz in Washington, D.C., and he said 90% of the people that come to me have the opposite problem of that. They think their company is worth so much more than it actually is, and they don't.
Right.
And I would be interested to see how many of those were men versus women, whereas we're willing to give everything away for nothing.
Absolutely. Right.
Without stereotyping ourselves here. Okay, so now that we're talking a little bit about finances, let's switch the conversation to 280E. So we have this regulation where because we are touching an illegal plant, we can't write a lot of things off that a normal business could. Yeah. So we talked about this from the financial perspective of when you're keeping your books and tallying your expenses. Let's talk about it from a legal perspective. What does this mean to most companies? What do we need to be aware of from a legal perspective around this?
So what 280E is a section of the IRS code that says that if you are engaged in illegal activity, you can't take ordinary business deductions. I love this case because it came about because a cocaine dealer tried to take business deductions to adjust his tax liability, and he got the slap on the hand and told no. So we have 280E. What does it mean for your cannabis business? It means that you cannot do the ordinary deductions that most businesses have. You are only allowed to deduct your cost of goods sold. I am not a CPA, so you need to team up with one, or you need to team up with a consultant that will put that team together for you and make sure that they vet somebody who's got experience in this area. But the bare minimum of it is that you are looking at a tax rate that is effectively, I think, approximately 70% versus a tax rate of 30% on an ordinary business. You can't take your deductions for employee payroll taxes. You can't take deductions for rent of your facility. You can't take deductions for your legal team. You can't take deductions for using your CPA or accounting firm. So these are the ordinary business deductions that you're no longer going to have access to help you when you're figuring out your financials and whatnot. So it's really important that your business plan addresses full capitalization so that you make sure that you can pay for your business expenses, but also pay for your tax obligations. And then you also want to make sure that you have financials going out for a few years so that you know that you're able to stay in business for more than just the startup phase.
So
that was a mouthful. It was a mouthful, right?
But it's one of those things that makes us realize, look, if you're going to get into this industry, it's a long-term commitment, and you can't just jump in and not have funding. You've got to have the funding to get yourself a good team of people around you to help you navigate through the process and make sure you're compliant. And then, in Monterey County, for instance, where I used to live, they put a 15% tax on top of everything.
Yes. And in each locality, each city has its own special tax rate for this. Then the state has its own tax rate for it, plus sales tax. So it's just, there's a lot involved in it. There's a lot. It's
not a gold rush that everyone thinks it is, because it's going to get taxed all along the way. You don't have any write-ups.
But you know what? If you're good with your record keeping, if you make sure that your financials are in order and that you have the capital that you need to operate, you're still going to make a profit in this business. It's still going to be very profitable for you.
Well, that's good to know. That's very optimistic.
and, but there's hope. There's lots of legislation that's been proposed to help do away with the 280 issues. If Cory Booker's proposal goes through, we could see a deschedule. I know we're all like fingers and toes.
It's very far-reaching, but we almost need things that are that extreme so that we can start bringing it back into normalize it, because we don't have those things that are way out there, then we'll never reach where we really want to be.
Absolutely. And it needs to be brought to the public's attention that you have this booming industry with billions of dollars of tax revenue, and yet it's still federally illegal. So how that tension there, it has to be resolved somehow.
So does that mean once it becomes federally legal, once it is or rescheduled, that then 280E will automatically go away?
I doubt that it's automatic. I think I don't want to give you a flip answer for that one right now.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And the other thing that your viewers should realize is also the banking issues. Not being able to go into Wells Fargo and take your cannabis money, boom, can't do that. There's a lot of credit unions. The great thing in LA, we've been talking, and they've been talking about having a city bank.
Yeah, proposing a community bank at either the local or state level.
Right.
And that's what they're doing in Oakland as well now, I understand.
Yeah. So people are understanding that there are issues surrounding the industry and really trying to work with city council. That's why it's so important for everyone to be at those meetings.
Agreed. So one last question on 280E. So before, we were earlier talking about the difference between a company that touches the plant and one that doesn't, that's an ancillary business. So in this situation, again, my business, I can take my normal write-offs, but once you touch the plant, you activate 280E in your business, basically.
Yes, and I hesitate. The only reason I'm hesitating is because I don't want to give you an incorrect answer or give your audience an incorrect answer. It's very circumstance specific, because I do know of somebody who is a consultant in the business and has had issues with the 280E and also with having their funds seized. So I think that the general consensus is that if you're not touching the plant, it's not an issue for you. But again, with the caveat that you really need to look at it from just based on your specific circumstances.
And talk to a tax person.
And talk to a CPA that knows about the cannabis industry.
Right.
Good advice. All right, Sarah, do we have any more questions? Do we have any questions at all?
Nope, not at this time.
All right. Well, I guess we're answering these questions as we go.
Yeah, right. Let's hope so.
So is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we have not touched on today before we end our conversation together?
For me, I would just say that I think it's really important for anyone who is interested in this business to do some research on it. Go to local events, go to meetings, go to meetup groups, go to conferences, learn about it, learn what is and is not cannabis, what is and is not an ancillary business in cannabis, so that you know what risk you're willing to take and what you're comfortable with. And then, decide what your business is going to be after that.
Love it.
That's pretty much it. I think you hit everything.
But compliance is key. Compliance.
And that is key. It really, really is. It really is.
Don't go into it blind and educate yourself.
Make no assumptions.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And do your due diligence.
Times 10. Just when you think do it again. Because, the reality is we live in an ever-shifting world where one day it might be one way in your city or your state, but it could easily change. So you can never rest on your laurels, so to speak, and assume that you know everything. Which takes us back again to the need for activism, because if you're participating in your local area and your state, then you know when those laws are changing.
Absolutely.
And California is going to give you a compliance reminder every year anyway, because you have to renew that license every time.
Yes.
Once a year, people. It's not permanent.
Absolutely. And in the span of 7 months, would you say, California law has shifted dramatically? We had just medical, and then we had the recreational trailer bill. There's been so many things. So I totally agree with you that you have to look at on this day. And I always tell people sitting here, right now.
At this moment.
This moment. This is what's going on.
That's awesome advice. Ladies, I've enjoyed my conversation with you so much. I want to give a big hug right now. I love it. And I cannot wait to see you again at the next Women's Empowerment Summit that Simone and her team are putting together in February.
Absolutely.
We will absolutely be there. Will you be in Vegas in November for MJ Biz?
We won't be in Vegas, but we will be probably in Anaheim in September for the NCIA. So.
And we'll be in Long Beach at the end of
And
September.
we're going to be in Long Beach at the end of September with a booth at the State of Cannabis.
Yep.
Right
Check
on.
us out.
So
Come
check us out there.
Excellent. And if you want to get in touch with Toni or Monique, you can reach them at 4LeafConsulting in Los Angeles. You can also leave questions for them. If you have any questions about the things we talked about today, feel free to leave a question in the comments, and we will let Toni and Monique know if there are questions that they need to come on and answer. And ladies, I'm just so glad to have you in our group and participating. I'm really looking forward to posting your checklist and having that as one of the things that we're able to share in the group. Thank you for your generosity on that. And I think we need to have you on again in a few months and see.
Absolutely.
Yes, come on after we have our transition in January, where the rec legal regulations take effect. Let's have you back on, and we'll talk about what's changed, and we'll revisit this conversation because we need to every few months.
Absolutely.
Thank you again for having us. This was wonderful.
I'm glad you enjoyed yourself.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
All right. Join us on Friday for our next Founder Friday. I'm not sure who our guest will be yet, but I guarantee it will be a great show. Have a wonderful week, ladies, and I will see you in the group Women Entrepreneurs in Cannabis. Bye for now.